All right, so 11.6 is called infinite geometric series, and I showed you the equation yesterday, but I'm going to show you it again today. But you just need to know that it's for geometric. You can't use it with arithmetic. It's only geometric, and it looks like this: S equals the first term over 1 minus R. The big stipulation on this one is that R, or whatever the rate or the ratio is going to need to be between 1 and -1. If it's outside of that, you're just going to say no sum, okay? So that R is just going to be the common ratio, and we'll practice getting one, but you guys you already know how to do it. All right, so for example, number 1, some of your problems, they're just going to give you a series of numbers like 8 minus 4 plus 2 minus 1 plus, and then it's just going to say dot, dot, dot with nothing at the end. That means it's going on forever, right? It's infinite. Versus the other formula, which is going to end with a number right here. Okay, so it's going to be finite. All right, and then the directions are just going to say find the sum. And so the first thing you're going to want to do is find that common ratio. Does anybody recognize it or see it?
Yeah, -2.
Yeah, you're going to be multiplying by -1/2 or dividing by -2. So multiplying by -1/2 is the same as dividing by -2. You just want to write it as multiplication, okay? So if you recognize that it's dividing, just change it to multiplication. All right, then you're just going to take that information. We've got term 1 right here, right? It's listed for us. Sometimes you're going to have to find it. Sometimes they give it to you. And just plug it in. So we're going to have the first term, which is 8, divided by 1 minus, and then it's going to be -1/2. Okay? So you just need to pay, the hardest part right here is just recognizing that this is plus plus, right? So this simplifies to 8 divided by 3/2, which is the same as 8 times 2/3. And the calculator should do that for you. You should get 16/3.
Or 5 1/3.
Or 5 1/3. Whichever way you would like to write it. All right? Any questions on example number 1 there? Oh, let me shrink it so you can see it a little better. There you go. Okay. Example number 2. Some of them you're going to see written with the summation. And so you can use any variable. We're going to use m equals 1 on this one. And then up top, it's going to have an infinity symbol. Okay? That means just that's going to go on for forever, right? Versus the ones before had a number there where it stopped. All right? And then the formula is 5 times -1/2 to the m minus 1. And so for the formula, you need 2 things, right? You need term 1, and you need the common ratio. All right, so to get term 1, we're going to take 1, because they're telling us that's the number. The first number is 1, so we're going to plug in 1. So let's calculate it. 5 times -1/2 to the 1 minus 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. Anything to the power of 0 is 1. So this is 5 times 1. And 5 times 1 is 5. Okay? So term 1 is 5. Now we need the common ratio. Well, in order to get the common ratio, we need a second number. Okay? So we just did term 1. I'm going to do term 2. You can really pick any. It's just easier to pick term 2, but it's up to you. So I'm going to do 5 times the negative 1/2 to the 2 minus 1. And 2 minus 1 is just 1. So you're going to have 5 times negative 1/2 to the first. And 5 times negative 1/2 is just negative 5/2. So to get that common ratio, we're going to take the negative 5/2 and divide it by 5. So when dividing by 5 is the same as multiplying by what? How about 1/5? So negative 5/2 times 1/5. If we reduce this way, we get negative 1 and 1 here. So negative 1 times 1 is negative 1, and 2 times 1 is 2. So the common ratio is negative 1/2. So those are the two numbers that we need to plug into the formula. And you want to check and make sure that that common ratio, that R, remember back up here, is between, well, is less than positive 1, but greater than negative 1. So is negative 1/2 in that range? Yes, okay? All right, so the infinite geometric series sum is the 5, which is the first term, divided by 1 minus negative 1/2. Whoops. And again, minus a negative, change it to plus plus. So we've got 5 divided by, what is 1 plus 1/2? 1.5. How do you say that as an improper fraction? 3/2. So 5 divided by 3/2. So we want to multiply by the reciprocal, so we say 5 times 2/3. If it helps, make it 5/1. And the answer should be 10/3. All right? One more example, and it's pretty quick. All right, so here's example number 3. Written as a sum, so we've got I equals 1 down here, infinity up here, and 3 times 4 to the I minus 1. Okay. So again, the variable can change, it doesn't really matter. Just two things you need are the first term and the common ratio, right? So for the first term, we're going to plug in the 1. Term 1, we're going to say 3 times 4, and then we have 1 minus 1. 1 minus 1 is 0. Anything the 0 power is 1, so it's 3 times 1, and 3 times 1 is 3. To get the common ratio, we need another one, so let's plug in 2. So we're going to have 3 times 4 to the 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1, and in this case, we have 3 times 4. 4 to the first is just 4. So it ends up being 12. All right? The common ratio needs to be between what and what? 1 and negative 1. Is 12 between 1 and negative 1? No, this is not between 1 and negative 1. So you just say no sum. Okay, so if you get to that point and it's not, then you're done. You're done with the problem.